Welcome to the first day 4 of the 2022 season. There he is.
Holy
Frank
smokes.
Scalish. Jeffries is off scouting a basketball team for his tournament this weekend, Frank.
Dude, that's money.
He jumped in his studio today. His cat has, Izzy has diabetes. So Izzy has to get a shot every morning, and then he feeds her, vacuums the studio, and off to scout opposing high school talent. So they beat the 2 days ago. He walked into the studio and he said, "Man, if we can keep it within 25 tonight, I'll be happy." And I said, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We're playing the number 3 team in the state." And he calls me that night texts me actually at 10. They beat him.
Yeah,
biggest win in school history.
They beat the brakes off of him, actually.
How you been?
I'm good, dude. How are you, man?
I'm good. This is the last show of the first week, so I've been looking forward to talking about a bait that is near and dear to many anglers' hearts, bass anglers' hearts in the Ozarks area.
Oh, yeah, dude.
And across the country, but specifically here, we had Jason Christie on the show yesterday, and he actually gave us a glimpse of his Smithwick Rogue Box, which I believe is the topic for today, correct?
It is correct. And here's something funny. I have to get my notes because I watched every show this week, which I don't often have a chance to, but I have been taken ill, and so I had nothing to do, so I watched.
You doing better?
Yeah, I'm doing really good now.
Good. You sound
actually good. You see, I got like lots of paper here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to reference this because Jason said something yesterday that is totally 100% me. The thing that I hate the most is when I have to leave for an event and my stuff is in complete disarray. And there have been several occasions, and actually, when I say several, that's not even an understatement, where I had to pick the boat up on the way to an event and then break it in at the event and then load all my stuff in it and get ready to go. And I can't operate that way. I have such a bad case of OCD. I cannot operate that way. So when Jason was saying that, I was laughing so loud because I'm like, do I have anything in common with this guy? Because, Jason, he doesn't hardly say anything. Yeah. And I'm like, do I have anything in common with him? And then he's talking and I go, oh, there's one thing in common right there.
Yeah, that's got to be a pain in the butt being in where you live and then having to start the season. That's why, you don't really have anywhere you can break a boat in for a tournament that starts in early March in Florida, where they usually always start.
Well, January in a lot of cases. Yeah. And no, we don't. So what happens is my boats usually came up in January. So I'd have to go get another one and I'd have to drive down to Arkansas to get it because I ran Legends. Mm-hmm. So I would drive down to Arkansas to get it with all my stuff in tow and then load it up and then go. And, I'd have to call the tournament director to find out what, because most of the time we were going to Florida. So except one time we went to Amistad. And I'd have to go find out what lakes I could run it on to break it in and, the whole 9 yards. And it was a travesty, man. It was really difficult for me.
The first cat that I broke in was the Puma, like probably 4 years ago now. And, I was following it by the letter. You pull up the Merc app and you're like, don't run it over this and this. And I had my stopwatch and I was like 30 seconds at 35, then 45, then 25.
Right.
Then, because Jeffries was like, if you mess this up, they have a computer and can tell, and it's your
100%,
butt.
100%.
So I do it for an hour, and I get it in the water, so everything's golden, and I'd had the Skeeter before that and stuff, so it's not like I'm new with boats. It comes off pad and it just dies. Done. And like an hour and 5 minutes in, I'll never remember this. I'm on Thunderbird and it's the very first day and I'm like, I'm toast. I don't know what to do. Like, I can't tell Jeffries. I start trolling. It turns out a couple of those little diaphragms had blown inside of the because it was a 2-stroke. I thought I'd blown it up in the first hour. Now
That's
they went and put the
fantastic.
diaphragms. Thing ran good for the next 200 hours. So
No, I lit up 2 of them in my lifetime. I lit up 2 of them, which was one of them was an Yamaha, one of them was an Evinrude, and this was way back in the day when the Ficht first came out. Way back in the day. So I had an outdoor writer, and I was taking him out sauger fishing on the Ohio River, and it was like Valentine's Day.
So it was cold.
And it was brutal. I mean, brutal cold. And so I told the guy, bring tons of warm clothes and bring rain gear because it's supposed to sleet and snow. So bring rain gear. And on your way down here, because there's nowhere I could stop, try to get some minnows because I have some spots where we could jig and minnow these saugai or sauger. So he's like, yeah, okay, no problem. Where do you want to meet? I tell him where to meet. He shows up, dude, and he's like dressed for like, early fall. He's got like a flannel shirt on, jeans. I'm like, dude, you're going to freeze your ass off. I go, we got a 22-mile run right off the rip. You know what I mean? And he's like, oh, I'll be okay. I go, where's your rain gear? He's like, it's right here. And he's got a black garbage bag with a hole cut out in it.
Oh, great.
I'm like, okay. I said, you get the minnows? No, I didn't stop. And I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, I'm doing this show for you. You know what I'm saying? We're sauger fishing for you, not me. And so, swear to God, dude, we take off, and it's probably 21 degrees out. And
like one of those where the tips of your ears, like you're worry about them after about 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, I had a helmet and everything.
Yeah.
Snowmobile suit, helmet. Actually, I had a Coast Guard float suit. And so we take off down the river, and literally I am like getting to where I want to make my stop, and it goes dead silent, and all you hear is shh as the boat skates across the water with no power. and so I'm like, it's February. There's not a soul around, dude. It's not like you could wait for another boat. Yeah. There's no.
It's you guys and the saw guy.
That's it. And so listen to this. So we got about a 6.5 mile an hour current.
That's 6.5 mile an hour?
Yeah, that's going that way.
That's insane, dude.
And we launched up current.
Yeah, so you can't even trolling motor that.
Oh, God. Dude, we would have made it 500 yards. So he goes, hey, we should start trolling motoring back. And I looked at him and I go, are you for real, dude? I said, we're not going to get 500 yards and we're going to be dead out of battery. I said, there's a creek downriver about a half a mile, and I know there's a boat launch in there. It's a bad launch, but there's a boat launch. We're going in there, and I'm calling someone to come and get me.
Yeah.
So we go downstream, get in the creek. I called a marina down there that used to rig some of my boats, and there was a cop that they knew that lived really close to where we were at. So they called him. He came and got me, and I had to go get my truck and trailer. And I told the guy, the writer, I said, you could just stay here with the boat because this is a bad area and I'm not leaving this boat here. So you stay here with the boat. I'll go get the truck. Well, dude, we were 22 miles by water. Well, when you're on the Ohio River Valley, some of the
like an hour drive one way.
Yes, right. Some of the road goes along the river. Some of the road skirts around away from the river. So it took a while. I felt so bad for him. He froze his brains out, man, and I and we didn't make one cast. I mean,
well, at least he didn't get minnows.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was crazy in the middle of winter, in the middle of nowhere. And then
got to show this off. Wait.
Yeah, do it. Go.
No, when'd you break? You blew. You said were you going to tell the other one? Everyone loves a good blown engine story.
Nah. Nah, we'll wait. We'll save it for another day.
All right. So I got to show these off. So these came in. I don't think we've shown them on the show yet.
No, you never had them.
We haven't. So this is if you remember the last day 4 that we had, Frank made a, well, how would you describe the color?
Color number 7.
Which was?
It had to have purple and orange for Mark. And if you look at the herringbone, they're like little mini construction cones.
17 of them, one for each year that he hosted BTL. So they came, and Mark was like, you got to make sure you show this on the first show. And, from the Lure Net paint shop, if you ever order anything, this is what they come in. It's on the back. It's just, you wrote that? That's impeccable lettering, Uncle Frank.
What?
It's very well written.
Dude, that's years of engineering, man.
Yeah.
You got to write 1/8-inch letters.
To Mark. But see, here's the interesting thing. I write in all capital too, and my dad was an engineer, and he writes in all capitals.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I just picked it up. Like, I don't do cursive. I do all block letter, capital lettering, small, like for everything. Like when I write lowercase, it looks like a 12-year-old.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But perfect block. It says color 7 in honor of the years you spent changing the sport of bass fishing. And then this is the, one knocker.
Yeah, one knocker spook.
One knocker spook. Make sure I get the right one. So this is the kind of the first look at it. Does Frankie have any he's coming into town at 4:30 tonight? We're fishing the next couple of days. Is he going to have a couple of these?
He's going to have one for you, signed and dated.
Oh, fantastic. That will go in the case. So there it is again.
And if you look at the chin is a number 7 also.
And then it's dated on it 12/8/21. What does the FAS stand for?
Frank Anthony Scalish. It's my initials.
That literally is a one of a kind.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
One knocker right there. And these are eventually going to be up on.
Yes, they are.
The Lure Net paint shop.
Yeah, I already sent the colors in. They're working on it, and they will be numbered.
Are you going to be the first guy in history to sell out a spook in January?
No, because they're not going to be available in January.
I was just saying, typically it's, seasonal, but I think these will go as soon as they're up there.
Well, I know a topwater bait that could sell out in January right now. The tournament trails they're getting ready to go down to Florida now. And
right.
On the paint shop, there's a devil's horse. It's called Big O Brim.
Did you make that color?
No, I didn't make it. Okay. I wish I did though. It's a great color. It's a fantastic color. And the devil's horse is my absolute all-time 100% Florida bait. Whenever I'm in Florida, I got that thing strapped on. So it's kind of pertinent really to the opening of the fishing season for the tournament trails. Especially going to Florida. And, it's a really good color. I think it'll play well in Florida. The belly color's right. It's got the right colors on the face and the back. So.
Should we see if I can pull this up just to show the people what it looks like?
Oh, yeah. Pull that thing up.
So this is the first time I've done share screens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you might have to bear with me here.
Hey, we got firsts going on. There's a lot of firsts. It's the devil's horse.
There it is, right there on the
Big
top.
O Brim, very top.
That is fancy right there.
Yeah, it's a cool looking bait. The chin's a little orangey, little peachy orange. It's a really nice color. That bait in Florida, I don't know what it is, but it's here now. I'm going to say that bait in Florida, but I catch a lot of smallmouth on it up here too. But Florida's where I got turned on to that bait a bazillion years ago, and I wasn't really a believer in it. Now I'm talking, a long time ago, guys. I wasn't really a believer in it. And I had drawn out with a young kid, and we kind of became friends. And so the next time we went to Florida, I called him up. I said, "You in this event?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, then we could practice together. You want to go?" He's like, "Yeah." And he put a clinic on with that thing.
With the devil's horse.
The devil's horse. And then
it's a needlefish imitator, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. And then I said, okay, I got it. You know what I mean? And then, of course, it became one of my mainstays. Well, I can't leave anything alone ever. So I did some tweakage, and I brought them back up north, you know, to where I live, and the smallmouth hate that thing, dude. I'm
In a
just
good way.
telling you, in a great way. And so I'm actually this spring I'm actually going to do a complete smallmouth show with that bait.
Wood chopper, like
No,
or steady or toot toot toot.
I just pull it like 6 inches and just leave it sit.
Oh,
Pull
so you fish it almost like you fish it in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. They hate it, dude.
Phenomenal.
It's great. It's a great bait. And so, you know, I'm happy to see them starting to play with colors in that thing, because I wanted to actually do a bunch of colors for that bait. I just haven't got around to it yet. So that was a very pleasant surprise, you know.
What we're talking about today, you have done a bunch of colors in though.
Oh my God. The first, okay, so here, we might as well get into it.
Have at it. The floor is yours. Let's talk about rogue fishing in the wintertime.
In the wintertime. Okay, so here's something crazy. First, I'm going to talk about the Smithwick Perfect 10, because this bait gets no love in the bass community, like none. And here's the reason, okay? When the P10 was designed, all right, it was designed for bass fishing in the cold months when the bass suspend a little bit deeper, okay? I had done the first color set for it before the bait ever was even, you know, hit the market. I did a color palette. So in my color palette, I did several traditional stuff. Okay, I did this color called Crackle Clown. This was for the smallmouth. Here, I'll just hold it up, and then I'll show. So Crackle Clown, okay. And the cool thing about what I do is I put gut bags on them.
What?
Gut bags. You know how if you've ever seen a transparent bait fish, the only thing that's really solid is their gut bag, where their stomach is. And so what I do is I pearl it up and fade it out into transparency, just like a real bait fish. That's my signature, basically. So I didn't want a chromy bait. What I did was I used silver metallic and I put a marble pattern on it. So we called it Crackle Clown. This is absolutely fantastic smallmouth bait right here.
You think that's key to a target for those fish, especially on the translucent baits?
110,000%, and you're gonna see it today. You're gonna see exactly why, because I got some underwater footage. Not yet with the footage. So anyhow, that was one of them, and then I needed something like the Table Rock guys. I had to put some other things that were a little more traditional. So this one is called Lady. It's almost like Table Rock shad, but it's not. It's transparent. I got some metallic in it, lavender metallic and stuff in it, and then again I've got, you know, a relatively solid belly on it, and it's transparent. So when the water's gin clear, that's a good bait. A really good color that's been happening in the spotted bass community is Juice. Okay, where I have multiple back colors. It's semi-transparent, but I have a bone belly instead of a white belly on it. It's bone. And that's been really good for the spotted bass. One of my all-time favorite colors is lace minnow. And this is what I'm talking about. See what I did on the belly of this lace minnow?
The gut bag.
The gut bag, baby. Now
I've never heard that.
This is called lace minnow. Actually, what I did was it's a black-nosed dace, is what it is.
Is dace a type of bait fish?
Yeah, there's a bait fish. It's called a black-nosed dace, and that's what it was mimicked off of. And this is my absolute all-time favorite.
And it has that really pronounced lateral line that goes all the way down the length of the minnow.
Yes, just like a black-nosed dace. So some people call it the bass pattern, but it's not. But it could be.
Mm-hmm.
It could easily be, but it's not. You know what I mean?
No, that was totally different than a baby bass.
But this thing is money. So anyway, so what happens is I designed this color for when the smallmouth, this is Lemon Lime Crush. I designed this color for when the smallmouth wants something hot. Okay, again, gut bag. You know, you see the drill.
We're dangerously close to a T-shirt.
Yeah, no kidding.
Gut bag T-shirt. Uncle
bag.
Frank's gut bag.
Yeah, exactly. What are you gonna have, a Coors Light can in it? So so anyhow, so I did this color, and it was a smallmouth pattern because there are times when the smallmouth just want that hot color, right? Well, what happened was, okay, now I'm going to get to the story of it. So what happened was the walleye guys on the Great Lakes got a hold of lemon lime crush and started massacring the walleyes on it. We literally just introduced the Perfect 10. All of a sudden, the walleye guys went ballistic on this bait. So what happened is, I got the call, dude, we need walleye colors. And so, like, you know, the guy making the Dunkin' Donuts, for days, all I was doing is painting walleye colors. And so we loaded the market with all these walleye colors, which I don't have to show you because they're walleye colors. But
I just learned how to share screen, Frank. I don't know if you realized that about 5 minutes ago on the show. So if you want to show it, basically think of like a 6-year-old girl's birthday party.
I do not have them upstairs. I can't run downstairs and get them.
Pinks, yellows, oranges, greens, all in combination. A lot of dots, swirls, rainbows.
Yeah, exactly. The most,
you get the picture.
The most god-awful, gaudy colors, all hots, all fluorescents.
Yeah,
all
like if
purple.
a unicorn ran into a rainbow.
It would be, yes, exactly. It's like a thing of Skittles spilled out on them. So anyhow, it became so popular with the walleye guys, it never made it to the bass market. It literally never translated. Okay. So I love the big rogues. All right. I'm a big rogue fanatic. And so I decided that I got to do some wintertime videos. And I mean, when I say winter, I'm talking about New Year's Eve and the day before. I just filmed some videos and just mashed them like ridiculous. So here, this Perfect 10 has a beautiful, lazy action to it, just like the Rogues. But what I do in the wintertime is I fish it on 8-pound fluorocarbon. I throw it on a 725 Powell. It's a 7'2" medium heavy. And I throw it on that because I want to be able to keep the rod tip fairly close to the water. So I pull it, first pull, I pull it, get it to dive down to that 10, 11 foot range. And then it just hovers there. And then I shake the rod tip. And when I shake the rod tip, the bait, you know, when I shake the rod tip, the bait, you know, rolls on its axis like that and does that stuff, but in the same spot. Okay, it'll back itself up too because of the bill size. If you pull it down and you shake it and then you pull it and you stop it, it backs itself up a little bit.
Do you want to show the underwater footage that we have right now?
Let's show that.
This would be a good time right now for that.
Perfect timing. Let's show that video. Now pay attention to how this rogue wiggles. This is what the gut bag is going to show. This is what I'm going to talk about with this gut bag thing. Okay, so the first time it's going to pull, and I pulled it kind of hard to get it in the screen, but you see when the bait flutters, you see how that gut bag shines. Now wait, because I'm going to throw it back out and do it again.
Ooh, I kind of feel like I'm in like a NFL deal where they're doing like the play now. I can pause it and rewind.
Right. So okay, so see how that gut bag flashes?
Ooh, right there. There was a flash.
Exactly.
Right there.
Look at that.
One more time. That's interesting.
Isn't that sweet? That is, you don't get more realistic than that, but you see how the bait backs itself up too, right? Look at that.
Yeah.
That, dude, that, I'm telling you. But that's the importance of that gut bag right there. So anyhow, go moving forward from there. Okay, so I go out on this lake and I'm fishing areas that traditional. They're this area on this one lake is a traditional winter holding area, and it's not as deep as people would think. It's I call them neck downs, pinch points, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pull a map up right here. So on this map, the center here is the deep water. All right. So you see where you see. I'm gonna try and do. So you see where the deep water ends. Okay, it ends and then it shallows and flattens out. Then the lake keeps going that way. Towards here a little bit, but it shallows out. So you got it. The last deep water is right here. Just so happens the last deep water is in a funnel point where you got shallow water that pinches it down. So the bass will concentrate in front of it, in between it, and where it ends. Okay. So we go out there and I'm throwing the P10 in lace minnow and hammer them. I mean, like hammer them.
Wait, go back to your deal. Okay, point where the boat's sitting and where you're casting when you're hammering them, because I understand what it looks like, but how are you? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So my boat position is here.
Okay, so you're right before the neck down.
And I'm throwing on the deep edges of the neck downs.
Okay, I gotcha.
Or my boat position is here, and I'm throwing this way.
I got you, but you're focusing on that gut, the deepest part of it, and then the edges of it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Now, sometimes I'll be throwing it in 6-7 feet. Sometimes I'm throwing it right down the pipe, 15, 20. You'll see the bass on your graph.
Okay.
In fact, Frankie was with me on the one day, and we could only catch him throwing down the pipe. We couldn't catch him angling at all. It had to be right down the pipe. So, but here's the important thing. Okay, the cadence, how you work this bait. I'll pull it down one time nice and hard and get it down to depth. And then I pause it. And when I pause it, I'm not pausing it like pause it and then move it again. I pause it. I shake my rod tip back and forth, get that bait wobbling, and leave it there for several seconds to 20. And then I move it again, but now I don't pull it. I mean, I don't jerk it. I pull it about a foot and then pause it and leave it there and shake the rod tip and then pause it and leave it there. 99% of the hits come on that thing when it's just sitting there. All of a sudden your line starts moving, or it feels like a worm bite. It goes thunk, and you got them. Okay. The whole important thing is the cadence on this thing. If you get in a big hurry, especially in the winter when you're talking about water temps that are 38 to 39 degrees, you're not going to catch them. You might catch one, but you're not catching them. You have to be very cognizant of how you're working that bait. Now, another area that I fish this is not by any chance what you would look for in the wintertime. It's just a big giant flat, okay? And so what I do is I concentrate where the deep water hits the one edge and the deep water hits the other edge. But here's the funny thing. I'm fishing the flat itself. I'm not really fishing out here in the channel. I'm fishing really the flat itself. This particular thing does not traditionally dictate a wintertime pattern. But what I have found is a lot of times on these big giant flats, the bass use the flat as a feeding table. Okay. They're not going to be far off them breaks. My boat is off of that break. I'm not right on the edge of the flat. I got probably a quarter to a half a cast off the edge of that flat. The reason being is because if the fish suspend up to the 7, 8, 9 feet of the flat, right? If I'm too close, I won't catch the suspending ones. So I back off. Most of my bites come on the flat, but a lot of them come once I get over the flat, still maintaining that 7, 8, 9 foot depth, but they're suspending over the channel. Those ones I catch off the flat. So you want to be careful not to get right up on the edge of the flat.
Is that spot more bait fish dependent? The flat spot?
Wind.
When will you see more bait when that spot is on? And the fish, are they using it as a dinner plate to move up there and push the bait? So that spot is not something that they'll live on in the winter. It's an opportunistic feeding zone that you check, and if they're there, you smash them, and if not, then you go back and fish your funnels, your pinch points, your drum, the stuff you talked about.
Traditional winter stuff.
Okay.
These flats are dynamite. If these flats have any kind of grass on them, and I don't mean like loaded with grass, I mean an isolated clump here and an isolated clump over there, 10 yards apart, 5 yards apart, it's not jungly grass. It's just a little clump here. They'll stay there all winter long.
But you're not fishing the whole thing. You said you're focusing on the deep kind of where the contour lines get closer together at kind of the start of it and at the end of it. Does that just kind of give you a little bit more way to dial in than just randomly fan casting for half a mile?
Yeah, 100%. Because here's the reality of it. In the wintertime, two things happen, especially with the largemouth. They're never going to be far away from food, and they're never going to be far away from comfort, okay? They're not going to expend the energy necessary to run bait fish down for long periods. Their metabolism, the bass's metabolism, slows way down. Everybody says, oh, they slow down in the winter. But here's the reality. Our naked eye can't really see them slow down, okay? What they really mean by that is biologically the bass slows down. So here in the summertime when the water temperature's in the 80s and they got to eat every single day, sometimes twice a day, in the wintertime they might only have to eat once every 2 weeks. So when you look at the size of this rogue, this is actually 5.5-inch rogue, but it's a kind of a thick-bodied rogue. So when you look at the size of this rogue, right, that's the perfect meal for the bass because it's a big bite, all right? They can eat that size bait fish, and they don't have to feed for 2 more weeks. And so they're not going to expend the energy on a wasted calorie count, okay? So in other words, they're not going to run down, a 1-inch bait fish for 20 yards to eat it because they'll never get that value out of that fish. But when you got that big perfect 10 hanging in their face going, oh, I'm dying, don't eat me, they're going to take it because it's the easiest meal that they can get. And that's what you have to remember in the winter. That's why you slow things down. You want them to get an easy meal. Now, in the 30th and the 31st, I filmed 2 shows. They're going to air on LureNet YouTube this week. One of them is, and then probably the following week the other one is. So here, this is the kind of fish you catch on this in the wintertime. So you could run that video. I'm probably explaining how I'm fishing it in the video, but you guys won't hear the video talking. And here I'm on a big flat. I'm in a big giant flat.
That fish hit it on the paws.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I was talking about how to retrieve the bait. He hit it, so I was like, oh, that's good for the video. You know what I mean? But you see how the wind, little bit of wind, how it's pushing right on that flat? You can look at the waves. All the bait fish is stacked up right up against the edge of the flat. And you catch good fish doing this. Now, I never grabbed a line like that.
I was gonna call you out on that one.
Yeah, I never do that, but I saw he had both hooks.
So look at how that fish is hooked. So it's got the front hook and the front. When it's in the front hook, I've always heard on the jerkbait, when you got a fish that's eating it with the front hook, you're doing everything right.
Absolutely. He had the front one and the center one in his mouth. The back one is the one that got me in the hand when I grabbed him. But yeah, I mean, that bait was paused. He came up. That bait was paused, and he came up and got it just like it's supposed to. And here, look where he got it. The center hook and the front hook, right where the gut bag is. that's how they eat that thing. And here I'm only using 8-pound line.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And in 2 days we caught over 40. So it's
that
just
thing's welded into his. Right into the meat. He's not coming off.
He's not. That's why I grabbed the line.
What hooks do you have on that?
Those ones are Gamakatsu number 4s, but the hooks that it comes with are the same. Mm-hmm. I just changed them out because I was catching so many fish. But yeah, I mean, that's, that's wintertime fishing. And I love fishing in the winter now. I never used to like it because, well, crap, it's always cold. But now I eliminate boat pressure because I don't want to see another guy when I'm fishing. So I eliminate the boat pressure, and I can take my time and find these fish. Because here, that's the whole key in the winter. They're not going to be everywhere. In the winter time, in the warm months, fish occupy massive amounts of the water column. As it gets colder, their occupation shrinks. Where they are shrinks. In the wintertime, it's like 9 or 10%. And so when you find them, the reason you catch them is because there's so many in one confined area. And that's why you keep catching them, because here, I just told you earlier that they don't have to eat for a week to 2 weeks, depending on the bait fish they get. But there's so many bass in the area that you catch them. It's just really great. But if you're not on them, you could fish all day in the winter and never get a bite because you're not in the right place.
So my theory on the jerkbait is it is, like you mentioned, a high percentage bait, but it's one of the few high percentage baits to where they can hit it. They're, like you said, calorie expenditure versus reward. The bait is stopped. It's easy for them. They're not consciously thinking. They're not down there sitting going, I think I have a 62.5% chance of getting that minnow, right? But that's the survival. That's what's built into their brain. So the two things, and this is just based on what you've said, that come to my mind on this discussion that I want you to expand on, is you have a reaction bite in the winter. That's going to be your rattle trap, snapping a spoon, something like that. That's when you
100%.
know you're around fish. You're not really using that. That's when you know you're around fish, and boom, something kicks in. That's a lateral line thing, and you're bringing it right by them, and boom, they've got it. And then you have the feeding bite.
Right.
Which is your Alabama rig, dragging a big jig, popping a
slow rolling a swim jig.
Slow rolling a swim jig. But the jerkbait is really the best of both worlds, because you are moving that bait fast, which can elicit a reaction bite, but it's also a high percentage bait because it's stopping and staying in the same water column. So they're easily able to target it. So that's why an Alabama rig works a lot better over the single swim bait. And I think I've talked about this before, I think, is the percentages. If that fish sees 5 bait fish that are tight together, they have a much higher percentage than tracking down one bait fish. It's why a lot of the really good Alabama rig guys, and you included, will find, while it looks better with the wires all spread out and the bait fish, you never get your A-rig tangled or anything, and it looks amazing, you will get more bites if you have that Flash Mob Junior just out enough to where it's almost a compact ball. And the reason I think for that is much higher percentage. Instead of now swimming through the minnows, they're like, I'm 100%, 80% going to get one of those because they're tight together, they're balled together, and now they don't have to expand calories, and they're guaranteed to have a positive experience chasing that bait, instead of now I'm depleted from calories and didn't catch the dang thing.
Right. And if you notice too, because I do the same thing with my Flash Mob Junior, I keep the wires a little tighter together. And so if you notice, when you pull the bait, the Flash Mob Junior, the minnow, the lures get together. And then when you slow it down, they go out, they get together. And so what happens is, if you've ever seen a school of shad or any type of bait fish in the water, they all move in unison with the school. So it's way more natural than having some sticking out here and just fluttering around. It's more natural. They're always within close contact of each other. And that's a very, very good point on the Flash Mob, dude.
All right. So the Rogue is an interesting bait because there's a lot of jerk baits that out there that have similar actions to them, but there seems to be, to me, two different categories. There's twitchers and chuggers. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
They're darters and chuggers. And
Right.
one of the things that I noticed early on when I started experimenting between let's say between like a mega bass and a rogue was like on Grand, there are times where they're like, well, what's up with that rogue? Well, that rogue isn't crazily going everywhere. It's more seems of a straight line and lazy. Talk a little bit, and you mentioned it in the retrieve, but I think that's a super important part that I want you to go into more is kind of the different action that the rogue has than a lot of others.
Yeah, it's more of the reason that I like it so much, it's more of a lazy swimming action, okay? Where some of the other jerk baits, and here, look, I'll be honest with you, I do throw other jerk baits. You know, I mean, I've got jackals, I've got pointers, I've got everything. Some of the other ones are super tight. You know, they're real tight and fast. This bait is so lazy that when you pull it, it just, and if you've ever seen shad swim in the winter, they swim like that. They just lazy. Yeah, just real lazy. That's the key to the rogue. Okay. The other thing that I like about the rogue is the bill is flexible.
I have noticed that a lot.
Okay. Now here's why.
Here, do that again one more time. Let me put you on the big screen there.
Ooh, that's the little screen. I'm barely using any pressure on that too, by the way. Barely any. So here's the reason. If you slap that rogue down there, that bill flexes and it makes the rogue do crazy things in the water. Okay? That can get you bites as the water, if you're fishing on a cool down or the warm up, like in the
popping it on a slack line really hard.
You hit it on a slack line and that thing just, it's almost turns on itself in the water. It's real wild. But the beauty part about the rogue is, in the cold water, is it's lazy. It's slow. And man, those fish can't resist that. They see that every day. So here, I change my retrieves on the rogue as the water starts to warm in the spring, where I'll pull it and slap it and leave it. Pull it, slap it, leave it. In the fall, as the water starts to cool down, I do the same thing. And for my smallmouth fishing, if you see me fish this rogue for smallmouth, you think I'm having a seizure on the front deck of the boat, because I'm pulling it 5 feet as hard as I can. Wham, wham, wham. And that bait's going this way and that way and doing all this crazy stuff, because I want the smallmouth. The smallmouth are like a cat. If you ever played with a cat with a toy, all of a sudden you start ripping that toy and the cat freaking dives on it and he won't let it go. That's how smallmouth behave. So when I fish the rogue for smallmouth, I'm out of my mind fishing it. In fact, I brought a buddy of mine one time up to Erie, and we wound up catching, I don't know what we caught that day. He counted them. I just caught them. I didn't give a crap. I just wanted to catch them. So he said we got like 70 or 80, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But the first time I threw the rogue out there, I pulled it almost 6 feet, and then I reeled it back in and pulled it again. And he goes, what are you doing? And he throws his out like he's, largemouth fishing in Florida. He goes, twitch, 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 twitch. And I'm bowed up on one, and I got 5 or 6 chasing him in. And I go, dude, pull that thing. And he goes, wham, and wham. He gets locked up on it. And he just looked at me and he goes, I would never believe this. The water temperature is 50 degrees. He goes, I would never believe this. I go, smallmouth are out of their ever-loving mind. And if you want to catch big, giant ones, you got to be mental with that jerkbait. You know what I mean? And that's the difference. I mean, that's just the difference.
All right, one of the things that we haven't gone into, and I think it's one of the most intriguing things, and you talk to different jerkbait experts, and some will give you different answers. But, I mean, the Perfect 10 is a suspending Rogue.
Absolutely.
Now, we could do a whole hour on this because you can get into pressure and sea level and density of the water based on color. But
cold and everything.
Okay, so when do you start really looking at how your bait is behaving in the water as far as is it suspending perfectly? Is it rising slowly? Is it dropping slowly? I know obviously when you're smallmouth fishing, there's certain times like in the fall, I'll put different hooks on a jerkbait because I'm I don't care if I'm not stopping it. But dude, you're stopping this thing long enough to where it makes a difference. So talk about how you get it, because each one's different. I could take, I've got 4 of these here and I could take all 4 and they're going to not be identical. You know what I mean? Like that's just a different. So how do you figure out what column you want it in?
All right. Well, what water column I want it to be in?
Whether you want it to be slowly sinking, slowly rising, if it's intricately important that it is suspending perfectly, nose down, tail up, that whole deal.
So first off, I never want one sinking. I don't like them sinking. Now, well, I shouldn't say that. The only time I'll throw one if it's slowly dropping is when I'm fishing them super deep. Then I don't care. If I'm in open water and I'm fishing them deep, I don't care. As long as I'm not going through the fish, okay? Because they won't sink super fast. Now, I made a mistake with some of my suspending rogues, my suspending rattling rogues. I had painted some and I was going to be cute and I wanted to make them a little bit heavier so I can cast them easier on the bait caster. So I triple dipped them in clear coat and I sunk every one of them. And I was very upset with myself because I had painted some and I was like, I just ruined all that time to paint them. So I lightly sanded them down to try and take some of that clear coat off. But the Rogue's not a super smooth body, and so I burned them with the sand. I burned them sanding them. So anyhow, so what I do is I generally want a neutral buoyancy or super slow rising.
Go ahead. February 25th, 2011, Mark Tucker wins the Bassmaster Open on a suspending Texoma. Rogue on Louisville.
Oh, I thought we were on Texoma when he won.
No, he won one on Louisville. Here's a quote that he said. This is from a Bass News article. It says Tucker feels he was the only one employing the pattern that he did. He was slowly working a Smithwick Rogue jerkbait over 8 to 10. The key, he says, were his line, patience, and cold water. He searched for the coldest water he could find. Now, this is the key part here. They wouldn't hit it if it fell down, so I used Trilene XT Mono so it would rise a bit. I'd slowly twitch it, and they'd just load up on it.
Yeah.
I remember that in the back of my head. The key, he said, was I couldn't remember whether it was slowly sinking or slowly rising, but it was that Rogue was slowly rising.
I always want them, I prefer them to rise at the slowest pace humanly possible. And they are if you pull it down and it starts to float backwards on you.
Wait, say that again?
Here's how you know it's going to slowly rise on you. You see the bill on this thing. So when you pull it down, if you pause it, because of the bill shape, it's going to slowly back up. That's how you know it's rising. Even though it doesn't go whoop to the top like a floater, it might just be very slight, but it's going to back up on you. You saw in the video, it was backing up on us when I was pulling it. It was perfectly balanced. That's what I really look for. Now, some of the other jerkbaits that I make and that I throw, I have them rise a tiny bit faster because they're more of a vertical diving bait. I make sure all mine are horizontal. I know there's guys out there that love them when they tail dip. I don't. I want it perfectly horizontal. It gives me the most flash. It gives me everything I want. Now, there are times where the tail drop will help you because when you pull it, it kicks the tail up and gives you a lot of different flash too. But my preference is I want it horizontal. I go to painstaking steps to make sure they're horizontal. And I can't. You look. I'm not going to argue with the guys that tail weight them, and I'm not going to argue with the guys that point them nose down, because they catch fish on them too. I'm just telling you the way I do it and where my confidence level lies.
I know in crappie fishing with a crappie jig, when you're vertically dropping, when you're demiki for spotted bass and stuff, like it's a loop knot, and the key is that you have a jig head that presents that bait horizontal. Like
Yep.
I physically, you can drop a marabou jig or a little Gitzik grub down there and hold it above them, and if that thing is on a 45-degree angler straight up and down, I feel like you get a much higher percentage commit rate on a bait that is completely horizontal with a loop knot that is balanced. I'm assuming it's just a natural. I mean, I guess bait fish don't just sit vertically in the water when they're sitting there. They're sitting there like a bait fish.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing. I try to make it as normal and natural as I can. And I want it easy for them to get it. And I would rather have them eat the front two hooks than the back one.
There were a couple questions on the instant feedback. Yeah, we can go to some instant feedback if you guys have any rogue questions for Uncle Frank. But one of them that piqued my interest, I remember way back in the day, Kevin Short did a day on the lake in Bassmaster. I believe it was him, and he was using a Norman. It was like a Norman bait, but it was kind of a flat-sided jerkbait, I want to say, and he had like lead around the hook. What do you ever mess with that one? What was that?
That was a jerkbait that Norman actually did come out with. I forget the name of it now. I had a bunch of them. I don't have them anymore. It was a decent jerkbait. It was a really good jerkbait. They quit making them so many years ago, probably 15 to 20 years ago. They quit making them. It just never took off. There, back then the Rogue was the money bait.
Mm-hmm. I'm perusing the interwebs. I can't find it for some reason.
And then Pointer came out, with the Pointer minnow came out, and then that started taking precedence. And then of course later on Jackal, and then Megabass.
All right. Before we get to the questions, so there's like 19 or 20 iterations of it seems like every year. Like I said, I've got that old Mike's Tackle that used to have a bunch of the Rogues. They're all picked over now, but I showed you this before the show. I'll hold it up and show it again. But like, what year do you think that is? That's the old red packaging. It's like, that's like an original.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you how long ago that was.
And then obviously you've got like a super Rogue pack with the red on the side, and then there's like the signature series. What they have, like Jim Bitter and Mark Menendez and a number of those that came out. There's all. How do you determine? I mean, we talked about the Perfect 10 today. We talked about a bunch of the different Rogues. Like, do you throw all of the different rattling, non-rattling, the 4.5 inch, the 5.5 inch? Is there a better time?
I'm going to tell you the truth. I keep my Rogue fishing so simple, it's ridiculous.
I like to hear that.
I have the floating Rogue with the small bill, not the deep floater, not the deep diving floater, the floater with the small bill. And I fish that during pre-spawn and spawn, right over top of the grass and right over top of the beds. I have the suspending rattling Rogue, the original one. It's like 4 inches, 4.5. And I fish that real traditional ice out conditions. Exactly. Yes, that's it. I fish that in ice out conditions in the springtime, and then later in the fall when the fish get off the square bill, they get a little bit off the bank and they're not quite on the A-rig. And then I take my Perfect 10 and I fish my Perfect 10 after that. And then I fish the Perfect 10 on smallmouth lakes. So, and I can fish the Perfect 10 in the summertime on smallmouth lakes too. So the Perfect 10 really gets a little more seasonal use for me. But my Rogue fishing is simple. I don't have 500,000 Rogues. I just don't. I have a handful of colors in each of the ones I throw, and that's it.
Tricks to casting it. There's got to be some tricks of the trade to getting this thing out there, right? Because
Yeah, when you're throwing the smaller ones, sometimes you got to go to a spinning rod, which I ultimately hate doing.
but
With
that is sometimes that is the best option, depending
It
on the
is the only
conditions.
option. Yeah, if you're throwing a suspending rattling rogue, and it's windy out, there's a lot of times when you're not going to be able to chuck it with a bait caster. Now, for me, the perfect 10 will cast in the
Mhm.
wind. It's a big, heavy bait. I'll fish that on 8-pound line in the wintertime, and I'll go to 10 and 12 in the spring and summer. Just, and I throw it always on fluorocarbon to keep that neutral buoyancy. Um, and that's really it. I don't make it hard. It doesn't have to be. It's all about the cadence you're using and what kind of fish you're fishing. If I'm fishing over deep grass, I'll throw whichever rogue doesn't bury up in the grass, one that'll just tick it a couple of times, and that's how I do it over the grass.
Uh, John, Tommy, a couple other people. Speed clip, no speed clip.
Always, I always use it. Um, you guys are going to know me by now. I never tie directly to a split ring, and I never tie directly to the bait. I just never do. I never have, and I never want to.
I'm
Speed
gonna
clip. Oh, hey, speaking about speed clips, they're in stock right now. I had to tell you that because I bought 100 of them
hey,
the other
I'm
day.
gonna pull this video back up where you were that really highlighted the gut bag, and I noticed this when I was downloaded it because I'll use a speed clip or a
Regular
what are they
clip.
called? Yeah, just regular clip and stuff. But I've always wondered, like, how does that look on a jerk bait? Like, is it just like a big piece of metal like hanging off the nose of the bait? And I understand there's hooks and all that, but one of the things that I found interesting was when you pause this thing, did you ever notice that speed clip like sucks up against the side of the bait and becomes like basically invisible? I thought it was really interesting how it had absolutely no like it actually enhanced the action of that
It's
bait and allowed it to be freer.
Yeah, there's no intrusion.
Yeah.
That's why I like it because the bait runs free. It's like putting a split ring on a split ring. It just
Here,
runs free.
watch this. See how that split ring sucks up against the side of the bait like that? Like it's totally non noticeable.
Yeah, it weighs nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
on a weigh scale, it weighs nothing.
So the
it's
key
not,
is to use one of the lightest speed clips that you can. You don't want to get like a big heavy.
no, there's only two sizes, a
Okay.
magnum and a regular size.
So regular.
Yeah, regular.
All right.
But yeah, I always use the speed clip.
Red hook, that was another question. You ever mess around with that? Is that a fad?
Yeah, I don't put red hooks on them. I never have. You know what? I won't say I never have. In the beginning, when it was the thing to do, like a million
Mm-hmm.
years ago when I was 12, I did. And what I found was the red hooks were Aberdeen hooks dyed red, and they're not as
They're
strong.
gold underneath.
Right, they're gold, and they're not as strong. And I'm like, no, that's never happening in my world.
So here's something that's interesting too that I think a lot of people overlook with that reel speed. Do you ever move the bait with the reel, or do you use the reel to take up slack and only move the bait with the rod?
I only move the bait with the rod on a jerk bait.
So that being said, is it important to have a high gear ratio reel on a jerk bait as opposed to a low one? So when you have one that hits it on the end of a slap, you can take that line up?
You can do either. I actually fish them on my crankbait reels. So I'm only getting, 19 to 21 inches per reel turn. I only fish them that way. But in the summertime, I'll put them on what is it, 6.5 to 1 or 6.4 to 1,
Okay.
which gives me 23 to 25, just because I'm fishing it faster and I want to get the slack up and do my thing. You know what I mean? But in the wintertime, I just throw them on my cranking reels. I don't
You
even
don't
worry
fish it
about
around docks, or you don't have very many docks to fish it around up there, do you, in the winter?
Yeah, we do, and I will dock fish with them, but it's not my mainstay on the docks, but it is deadly. I mean, there are times when you surprise yourself, what you catch fishing them around docks. Like, whoa,
Feather, yes, no, ever.
not on the jerkbait. No, I just don't.
I know there's some guys around here, they'll throw feather on the back of it.
Yeah, I do too. I drew out with a guy from Canada in one of the tournaments up here on the big lake, and he had all the gaudy feathers and stuff on his, and he was pulling them off by the end of the day. He's like, "Get this out of here."
The long bill suspending ones, ever throw that or just stick with the? Don't they
No,
have a deep diver?
Yeah, 20 plus. It's more of a walleye bait.
Okay.
I don't monkey with that too much for bass. I have other baits like the Bomber 24A. I'll make that suspend and I'll fish that deep for bass. That's just a money bait.
A lot more color questions. So just if you had to pick two favorite wintertime jerkbait, largemouth colors and then smallmouth colors, just run down like if you were just going to say these are the couple colors for each species, or throw spots in there too.
Well, we'll do spots at largemouth and smallmouth. So
Okay.
basically I'll have. You want me to be specific or just say like 2 minnows and 2 hot minnows?
No, let's be specific.
All right. So Crackle Clown, and Chrome Clown for sure for smallmouths. Lady for sure for both. Overall for all 3 species. Lady. Juice for all 3 species. Lace minnow for all 3 species.
All right, and then this is kind of an ode to Jeffrey's question. He's got a lot of weird colors. He's got the crawfish colors. There's some hot orange colors. There's some really off-the-wall, non-traditional jerkbait colors. I'm not talking about the walleye colors, the smallie colors. I'm talking about like I showed that one, like that. That's basically a crawfish colored jerkbait.
Yeah.
And there are some guys around here that swear by that stuff on certain fisheries. What is up with that?
I don't know. I've never thrown a red jerkbait in my life, but I have friends of mine that fish all over the country as well, and they like that red one in the spring, dude. But I don't throw it. I just don't throw it. I really don't. I want natural stuff. I'm more into that. I want to mimic things. If I need a reaction bite, that'll come how I work the bait more than anything.
What else you got?
Because for me, for the Rogue,
yeah,
that's it, man. I told you I keep it simple. I won't lie. I don't lie, man. I keep it simple.
All right, but those are the 2 main places if you're going to go out and rogue fish all around across the country, or the 2 main areas that you showed today, or
the areas that I showed today are high percentage winter areas.
Yep.
That I did the last 2 shows on, but there are other places like here. Sometimes I love the steeper banks. Okay, but here's what I look for on a steep bank.
Can we draw one?
Yeah.
Can we draw one on during the show? This is the crazy part that Frank takes for granted. Like some guys take stuff for granted, like their skill set and ability. So we were setting up the show beforehand, and Frank just pulls a piece of paper out, and all of the diagrams from the beginning of the show he did in like 30 seconds, and they're just immaculate. And it would completely look different.
This won't be so immaculate.
Is this the first mid-show diagram that we've had in 40? No, you've done more mid-show diagrams.
Yeah. Okay, small flat.
So these are other areas. Preface this. What are these? These are other areas that you can look for if you've got a handful of rogues and want to go out and catch them on your body of water.
Right. I'm doing 2 illustrations right now. So one, I'm going to draw steep banks, but what I look for on a steep bank. And then I'm going to do an aerial. So I want you to see what the aerial looks like. The main shoreline might be straight, okay? But underneath, what happens is you got things going on here. Okay. So I got to get green so I could show you the land. Otherwise, it gets confusing.
The Bob Ross of bass.
Oh, I'm drawing pretty little trees. All right, this is too simple, but it's got to be simple. So when I look at a steep bank, okay, I look at steep banks with a very small flat. Could come out, could come out 10 feet, could come out 35 feet, but this small flat is what I look for.
A shelf.
A shelf. This could be, 5 to 6 feet of water. All right. And then when it gets to the edge, boom, it plummets. Oops. When it gets to the edge, it plummets straight down.
Yeah, a lot of riprap around dams is like that in Oklahoma.
Correct. But this could be natural bank too. The important reason for that is the bass, all they have to do is suspend up or suspend down. They don't have to move far to get to the food source. A lot of times what they'll wind up doing is they feed up where the flat ends. Okay. So I'll 45 degree them. I won't make a perpendicular cast where I cast, straight into it, because then you're only in the strike zone for that long. So I'll 45 degree it. So I can catch the ones that are actually on the flat and catch the ones that are off the little flat. That's how I approach that type of thing. Now, the other type of thing I do, and now this is, this is a little more traditional. What I'm showing you here, I'm just making a couple contour lines, and so you can understand this a little better. Okay, so now the other thing I look for on steep banks is tons of irregularity. Okay, so if this is my flat, this is my land up here. If this is my flat,
so you're down below that where your boat is.
Yeah,
your boat's down.
My boat's out here. Okay, so I look for irregularities in these flats. All right, the more irregular it is, the better I like it, because the fish hold on these turns. They hold on all the turns in here. Okay, that's where the fish hold most of the time. I very seldomly do I catch them on the outside, on the far tips of this stuff in the wintertime. It's always in there, or in here, or in here. It's always where it turns. That's kind of what I look for on the steep banks. Now, you see how irregular this is, right?
Yeah.
But even though it's irregular, you still have the vertical break on it. It's still very
just steep. Irregular vertical breaks.
Yeah, it's just got things going on, points, little pockets, little things that happen. Some of them might be right up against the bank. Some of them might be 20 yards off the bank. And then I just follow that contour. Now, if I start to see fish off the break underneath my boat, then I back up even farther. And then I start fishing the open water, because the bass will just suspend or not suspend, depending on where the bait fish is.
Does it ever get too dirty for a jerkbait? That was professional. Uncle Frank had a cough and he muted his microphone like the pro that he is. I think he's back. That was well played.
Oh my God.
You good?
I'm dying.
You good?
No, not good. No. But I will be good. Holy
Because
smokes.
you want me to tell? I've got about a minute story that showed me something crazy with jerkbaits that I'd never seen before. I was fishing with my buddy Kevin Ledoux, and this was 3 years ago. And, it started, it actually started like 2 years before that with my buddy Chip, and we were on the same thing, and there had been a bunch of rain, and it was real early in the year, and we were fishing this stretch, and Chip goes, "You got any jerkbaits with you?" It's kind of an impromptu trip. And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "I don't know why you'd want to throw a jerkbait. I was throwing a jig down it." And I said, "It's like a foot of water clarity, and it's like 41-degree water." And he's like, "Oh, I just want to try it." And he started smashing them, so much so that I put on a jerkbait, and we caught like 15 that day. You can still go back on my Facebook page and see it. I call like a 7-8 doing it. And I'm like, how did those fish hear it? So the next couple years, I was with Kevin Ledoux, and it was like brutally cold. So water temp is 38 degrees. Lake is really muddy, like maybe 6 inches of visibility. You pop the jerkbait once, you can't see it. And we go back kind of the same area and start strumming them again, like 15, 20 a day, like really good ones. And they're hitting it on the paws. And we move around some, and we're both like, this goes against like everything, like no water clarity, super dirty, and we get underneath a bridge, moving around in a different area, and I pop the jerkbait, and it's like one of those real crisp winter days, and you hear, and I'm like, did you hear that? And he said, yeah. So we both cast under the bridge, and we both go, and you hear, and it sounded.
You got that the reverb.
Yeah, but you could hear how loud that jerkbait was under the water when you had the reverb with the bridge. So we were like, holy cow, that's how they're finding it. They're using all this. And I mean, it was 37-degree water, 6 inches of visibility, muddy, and we were catching them on long pauses on the end of those shelves that you just showed about, where it went from, we would cast up to 5 foot, pop it down to 6 or 8 foot, and the boat would be sitting in about 25 foot, and it'd be 2 or 3 pops out right on the edge where that thing then dropped off into the deeper water. And it was unbelievable.
And were you throwing a chrome-sided one?
We threw solid bone-colored ones with chartreuse on them.
Yeah, I found that in the dirty water like that, bone and chrome work great. Bone is really reflective in dirty water. And
see, I always thought chrome was for clear water and sun.
I use it in dirty water. I want more flash. I want it.
But that's more sun, right? Chrome and sun, the foil stuff and stuff in the sun and the muted colors, and I read that in Bassmaster.
No, it's true. It's very true. But I'm in dirty water. I'll fish chrome. I'll fish chrome blue, chrome black.
You think it still gets flash?
Water. Oh yeah. I mean, you throw a spinnerbait in the dirty water, it still flashes. Of course, it kicks off a lot of vibration too. But that's what and solid bone. I'll throw solid bone in dirty water or pure white.
But that story kind of illustrated to me that there's more to it. Like I always just assumed the jerkbait was a 100% visual feeding bite. And it is, I'm sure, a lot in a smallmouth scenario in super clear water. But that demonstrated to me that those fish still know that thing's down there when they can't
see it 100%.
We assume they can't see it 100%. I would imagine there has to be a certain number of particles that you get in the water to where, like, visibility, like, I don't know what they can see. No one actually knows what they can see. We've never been a bass. We can't talk to a bass, but there would have to be some level of particles, because that's all that muddy water is, right? Is dirt, particulates in the water that prevent visibility. So they're feeling it with their lateral line, the jerkbait. They're still feeling that, 100%. Not seeing it.
100%. I mean, here, look, how many times have you caught fish that were blind?
Yeah, a lot.
Right. They feel it through their lateral line, and that's how they survive. That's how they survive when conditions get terrible, because they can still feed through their lateral line. And so, so that's a big part of it. But the bridge thing is really cool, because I noticed that too. And it's always under a bridge because it's like a sound chamber.
That's cool. You got anything else, Uncle Frank? Or Jeffrey's turned the heat off when he left this morning. I would venture to say it's got to be 52 degrees in the studio right now. Like, it feels like I should be throwing a rogue in the studio.
You should be. Well, you guys have fun fishing, man. Catch a bunch of fish.
We will, yeah. Frankie Jr. Is it just Frankie? Do you call him Frankie to separate you two, or Frank Jr. or Frank E. Jr.?
I just call him Hey You.
Hey You.
Hey You.
I told you it was...
I call him Frankie.
Okay, Frankie. It was confusing because when you call it says Frank Scalish. When he calls it says Frank Scalish. So it's kind of like roulette. You never know which Frank Scalish you're going to get.
You just know. Hey, you never know.
Hey, we made it through. We had two videos, 4 diagrams, bunch of questions.
Dude, you are on the move.
You know what we're talking about next week yet?
Not yet. This is all last minute stuff for me.
All right. I think that's all we got.
Remember before we go, Devil's Horse, Big O Brim, paint shop. Love the color.
Day 4 with Frank Scalish. We're out of here.